defense is about to get a hold of some very important information. I am going to explain what all of this means for the man accused of brutally killing a 14-year-old girl. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, we have an update in our David coverage that we need to talk about. We just got a big behind-the-scenes sneak peek at what the prosecutors in this case, the Los Angeles DA's office, has been up to in this case over the past year. And I think it's pretty significant. Now, I'm curious what exactly this is going to mean for David, for his case, if the defense gets a hold of this information. I know I'm being very vague right now, but there's a reason for it. I want to get into it. Let me explain. Let me put it into context. So David, of course, is the romantic homicide singer currently charged with...
You know how accused child murderer David has been under investigation for months by authorities? Well, we just learned some key details about the secret grand jury proceedings that were hearing evidence in this case. The quote is dry, it's bureaucratic. It is the legal equivalent of a locked steel door. But behind that door is a 14-year-old girl who will never turn 15, and a man whose profession was to sing about love, now accused of an act so methodical that the evidence list reads like a hardware store inventory. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
Sharp instrument, and prosecutors allege that he purchased all these things: a blue inflatable pool, chainsaws, a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and that he dismembered her. He dismembered her body, that he made suspicious trips to the Santa Barbara County area, that he lied to friends and associates about the alleged smell of decomposition at his place. And we know that September 8th, 2025, that was the day after what would have been Celeste's 15th birthday.
Stop calling me Lindsay. That is the official public memorial from the President of the United States to a man who was, by every other account, his closest ally in the Senate.
Doesn't mean that there wasn't a grand jury. No, there were grand juries. In fact, there were reportedly multiple grand juries hearing evidence in this case. And perhaps they were investigative grand juries, right? Not in panel per se to get an indictment, but to present evidence, to subpoena witnesses, to get documents, to lock...
Usually the response is grief. But when the most powerful man in the world spends his first public moments after your death roasting your golf swing and your political ideology, something is wrong. He was a total workaholic politician.
Ring and pinky fingers on her left hand had reportedly been amputated, and neither was found in the Tesla. I say all this now to get to the development, the update. We know there is a preliminary hearing set for July 21st in this case. This is the opportunity for the prosecution to present what they hope is enough evidence for this case to move forward toward trial. It's a low standard. It's a probable cause standard. Kind of see the same.
He also discussed Graham's golf game, noting he wasn't Jack Nicklaus or Tiger, a dying man's legacy reduced to a handicap. Senator Graham, who had just returned from a trip to Ukraine, who was a key player in the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, and who the president had spoken to just hours before his death, was merely tired.
By the way, just going to that report, you read verbatim from the summary portion. It says in part, quote, autopsy examination was limited by extensive post-mortem changes. There are 2 penetrating wounds of the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp force injuries. The wound on the upper abdomen penetrates the liver, and the wound on the left chest penetrates one of the left intercostal spaces with disruption of the adjacent ribs' cortical surfaces. The left lung appears intact. The bilateral upper and lower extremities show full thickness dismemberment. Multiple other skin and soft tissue defects are present.
The second a person is no longer useful, they cease to be a person and become just another story.
That he used a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument, and prosecutors allege that he purchased all these things: a blue inflatable pool, chainsaws, a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and that he dismembered her. He dismembered her body. That he made suspicious trips to the Santa Barbara County area, that he lied to friends and associates about the alleged smell of decomposition.
Then immediately pivoted to, he would call me all the time. I'd say, stop calling me, Lindsay. And then there was the eulogy. He was a total workaholic politician, Trump added, seemingly unaware of his own irony. Now, some people don't call that work. Some people call that a lot of talking. In the aftermath of a sudden death, where is the respect? Where is the unity? Instead, we got a reminder that loyalty to Trump is a one-way street.
David was no longer cooperating with the investigation. We know November 21st, 2025, is when the court orders that the LAPD medical examiner's report and information on Celeste's death be sealed, that a security hold.
Before we go deeper into what the president's words actually reveal, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Consider the official statement. It is not a tribute, it is a performance. The president, in his interview with Fox News, didn't just mourn the loss, he dissected the corpse of a political friendship in public. He reduced the man who sacrificed his political identity to defend him to a series of humorous anecdotes about golf and grievances. He said he was a great guy and he was a friend.
Also, the lockdown on the information, what does that tell us? They don't want anyone to know the facts that only the killer would have known. So they've got to lock that down. They want to make sure that there's nothing publicly released that a potential defense attorney would say, okay, this is something that only the killer knows, but we've got to make sure that we can defend against it. Prosecutors want to make sure that nothing gets out forensically that somehow leaks into the air and that a potential defense team gets hold of.
But the most important voice, the voice of the man who owed Graham his presidency's survival through 2 impeachments and countless legislative battles, decided to remember him less like a fallen statesman and more like a telemarketer he couldn't get rid of. This isn't a eulogy, it's a document dump of the soul.
And when it comes time for accounting, that's also fully automated. Odoo can create invoices, track expenses, and even summarize data with AI to save you hundreds of hours. You know what the best part is? You can choose your apps and even build custom workflows so it's all fully tailored to your business's needs. Look, take your business to the next level by consulting with an Odoo expert today for free at odoo.com/sidebar. Those December grand jury dates, what do we know? Well, first of all, I remember that's when we first started hearing rumblings about a grand jury, by the way. But more specifically, December 9th, 2025, that is when...
Follow the timeline. There is a document called the Sudden Unexplained Death in Washington file. It's not a joke. It is the raw data of political warfare. We are directing you to look at the public record of Graham's recent trip to Ukraine.
The reason I even found out about this, before we even talked about what TMZ was reporting, Steve Fisher, the private investigator hired by the owner of the Hollywood Hills property where David was purportedly staying, near where the Tesla was found. He'd been looking into this case for months. I saw his post on X. This is what alerted me to it. He posted on X, quote, "A motion filed in the David case reveals that the investigative grand jury met on 17 separate days. We are now only 10 days away from the preliminary hearing, and I look forward to hearing the witness testimony."
Look at who immediately starts talking. The president wanted to take credit for the peace process. Graham was in the way.
Back from Montana, I think one of 3 things could have happened. 1, he takes the 5th, all right? He invokes his 5th Amendment right not to incriminate himself. 2, he lays some kind of foundational testimony, but for whatever reason, they don't go beyond 30 or 40 minutes. And then 3, the third possibility, I think, is that there's some kind of immunity deal that gets launched right about then. And for whatever reason,
go to the official congressional record. Look at the timeline of the phone call. Look at the president's own social media posts about the peace deal. And then ask yourself, does the president really think his friend died of a heart attack? Or does he know something he isn't telling us? Because a workaholic politician, a total one, doesn't just stop. Project Cold Case is dedicated to finding the truth. This video was just the beginning. If you found this breakdown compelling, hit the like button, share it with someone who is tired of the manipulation, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an investigation. We follow the evidence wherever it leads.
Petition. And notably, at a court hearing, Bennett Dodson, assistant DA for Waller County, told the court, "Don't think it's a secret to anyone at this point that Mr. David Burke is a musician who is quite famous, and this matter concerns a car that was registered to him at these witnesses' address here in Houston that had a dismembered, decomposing body in it. I would say if a car
The
with
official
a
cause of death is a sudden cardiac event. But the president's narrative dropped a bomb that threatened the entire foundation of that story. Graham, the hawkish Republican, the man who spent his final days advocating for Ukraine to continue to keep the war going, was being blamed by the president for prolonging a conflict Trump allegedly wanted to end quickly.
What are
So
they
you've
going to
got
do with them? How's it
statements
gonna help
under
their
oath
case?
in a grand jury by witnesses for the prosecution, And the defense is going to attract them. If they testify, if these witnesses testify differently at a preliminary hearing, at a trial, the defense has prior statements that they can use to challenge them, to impeach them. So for the defense, it's certainly helpful, because if the witnesses deviate even slightly from what they've said, defense is going to pounce on it. So while there is a benefit to the prosecution, the defense is going to get all the witness transcripts. The defense is going to get to pore over them. And by the way, the defense is also getting to see the prosecution's strategy, their theories early on. So there is a benefit for the defense.
The official cause of death is a sudden cardiac event. You can't be a workaholic if you're dead. So what was he working on that was so dangerous? Today we are asking the questions that the mainstream media refuses to touch because they are too busy transcribing the punchlines. There is a pattern in Washington. When you see a sudden death, look at who benefits.
The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office are under investigation. Under investigation for allegedly accessing law enforcement investigation files without proper authorization. And there is a belief that this is specifically about Celeste, about her death. And we know that there was an unfortunate aspect about this where there was the premature release of details about her death before the autopsy report was even published. And NBC had reported that it may have been the Celeste case that prompted this probe by the Human Resources Department. You tell me your thoughts.
You know how
on this,
accused child murderer David has been under investigation for months by authorities? Well, we just learned some key details about the secret grand jury proceedings that were hearing evidence in this case. The quote is dry, it's bureaucratic. It is the legal equivalent of a locked steel door. But behind that door is a 14-year-old girl who will never turn 15, and a man whose profession was to sing about love, now accused of an act so methodical that the evidence list reads like a hardware store inventory. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
The prosecution, and they're doing it sort of step by step. You know, they're not taking it right to a preliminary hearing. That's coming later. And they could have indicted with one grand jury, but what they're doing is using the grand jury as an investigative tool. So in that context, it's not surprising to have multiple sessions, multiple meetings. You've probably got multiple witnesses coming in, dealing with the forensics, the medical examiner, all that kind of stuff. So not surprising in the context of building the investigative case.
To be clear, you, me, the public, the media, we will never see those grand jury transcripts, right? Or
yeah,
maybe,
we won't see them unless for some reason
something
something's attached to a pleading that's filed in the court, or, you know, sections come up. But what the prosecution has is, you know, a prior statement under oath by these witnesses. Of course, that cuts both ways for the defense too, because you've got potential impeachment material. But the prosecutors have decided they've got to use the grand jury to do their investigative work for them, lock in these statements, lock in these witnesses.
Why is this beneficial to the defense? Now that the defense is going to get these grand jury transcripts from all of these days, and again, I say at least, I don't know if there was other days of grand jury testimony. We'll talk about the specific dates. I mentioned it before. But now that they're going to potentially get the transcripts from these specific dates, why does the defense
two
want
bites
them?
of the apple?
What are
So
they
you've
going to
got
do with them? How is it
statements
going to help
under
their
oath
case?
in a grand jury by witnesses for the prosecution, and the defense is going to attract them. If they testify, if these witnesses testify differently at a preliminary hearing, at a trial, the defense has prior statements that they can use to challenge them, to impeach them. So for the defense, it's certainly helpful, because if the witnesses deviate even slightly from what they've said, defense is going to pounce on it. So while there is a benefit to the prosecution, the defense is going to get all the witness transcripts. The defense is going to get to pore over them. And by the way, the defense is also getting to see the prosecution's strategy, their theories early on. So there is a benefit for the defense, rather than going, say, right into a prelim or just going right to the grand jury. The defense is watching the prosecutors build